All right, hello everybody, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if this is your first time here. Thank you for joining me as we continue along with our series previews for the second round of the Stanley Cup Playoffs. As you guys can tell from my hat, this is the series that I am most excited about, the series I'm most passionate about, and the one that I'm just also most excited to do a video for. Really quickly, it is currently 7:42 Eastern Time PM on May 6th, meaning that I am unable to watch the Carolina-Washington game, or at least all of it at the moment. I think the plan is to record for as long as this takes. Hopefully, it'll cap out at around the 30-minute mark. I'm not really sure. And then I'll go upstairs and watch that game while I edit this video because I do want to post this video as soon as possible because this series starts in less than 2 hours. I'm going to do my best not to be a biased Oilers fan. That might not be possible. But I do think this video will be the longest and the most interesting for you guys to watch, mainly because as an Oilers fan, I that kind of means that this is the series I have the most to contribute analytically because I spend, from October to March slash April watching Oilers regular season hockey. I know that lineup inside and out. I know what that lineup's capable of, meaning I'll have the most to share as far as expectations are concerned. I can't really say the same when it comes to the other teams in the league. As always, we'll be doing this video with the same format that I've done the last two. If you haven't seen those, I highly recommend checking them out, especially if you're a fan of either of those four teams. We'll break them down offensively, break it down defensively, special teams, goaltending, and then in this case of Edmonton, I'll go into a bit of a segment about expectations and storylines, I guess, some things to kind of watch out for. Um, we're using The Athletic again. I've credited the article people multiple times over, so we'll do it again. Same people as the last two. I will have the article linked in the description so you guys can go check it out. I highly recommend it. I'm not taking credit for any of the stats or numbers that I post up. I didn't find those myself. I'm getting them from this site. But I talked about the series probability that the this model that Dom Lucian uses, and in yesterday's video, well, technically that was today's video, but I recorded it yesterday. Carolina, Washington, the Hurricanes had a 67% chance of winning that series based on the way the model had it kind of rounded out. In the case of Edmonton, Vegas, it's actually 52% for Edmonton. So a very, very, very close split between these two teams. Um, and I do think that that's somewhat indicative of my thoughts. I always start off with my series prediction and then get into the details. So here we are. My brain has gone through a lot of different options. I think there's a world where Edmonton wins in 5, 6, or 7. I also think there's a world where Vegas wins in 5, 6, or 7. I believe we live in a world, my prediction is Edmonton in 6. I have a feeling about it. I look at this series in a similar way to the Dallas series from last year in the conference finals. It wasn't a series that Edmonton was favored going into it, but they ended up just really putting together a great effort, a really strong team effort, and managing to come out on top. And yes, there are a lot of things about this Oilers group that is different from last year's, but we saw a lot in the late stages of that series last round against LA that allows me to believe that maybe we are going to be seeing a similar sort of outcome for the Oilers this time around, winning a series that maybe they're not expected to win. Um, so let's get into the numbers. First, I'll focus on talking about some of the storylines at the end. So if that's something that interests you, you can stick around. Um, I'm going to pull up the graphic now. It'll be on one of these two sides. So as you can see, this chart in and of itself kind of shows everything you really need to know. The Oilers have a much higher offensive rating than Vegas's, which is, in my opinion, the way it goes. I think Edmonton has the better depth up front. That might make some people mad. We'll get into that. This chart is regular season and playoffs, so it's not just indicative of last round. like these teams are, I mean, it's decently evenly matched. The Oilers have a better expected goals for, um, but then they ended up only having a 2.48 goals for afterwards. So they're actually scoring at a lower rate than they should be. Vegas is also just very slightly lower with that expected 2.64 to an actual 2.62. Corsi, the Edmonton Oilers have a bit of a higher Corsi, but it is pretty close. Vegas, the better shooting percentage. And then looking at the power play, Vegas's power play was better throughout the regular season. That is different for the playoffs. We'll get a little bit more into the special teams later on. And then I think to nobody's surprise, Vegas with a much higher defensive rating than Edmonton. I feel like that's kind of clear as day. You don't really need an offensive numbers chart to tell you that. But I was pretty impressed with the way the Oilers played defensively to end the series against LA. Regardless of that, it's not better than Vegas's defense. Now, just to clarify one more thing, I don't tend to really like pull too many pieces from this article. I usually just use it so that I can show you guys that chart. I always do read them first. Um, the first thing to mention about Vegas's decor is Alex Pietrangelo and Noah Hannafin were absolutely horrible in the series against Minnesota. So it'll be interesting to see if Bruce Cassidy, Vegas's head coach, decides to ice that pair. The numbers are here somewhere. Yeah, so Pietrangelo and Hannafin at 5-on-5 last series played nearly 75 minutes together. They were outscored 5-2 and controlled only 43% of the expected goals, which is really bad. That's not going to cut it against the Oilers. And if the Oilers decide to stack up and go McDavid and Draisaitl and they're playing against Pietrangelo and Hannafin, the Vegas Golden Knights are going to get killed. Um, on the other side of it, Shea Theodore and Braden McNabb had a really good showing together at 5-on-5 when they were on the ice. So that's an interesting thing to keep an eye on. That's the pairing I think Vegas is going to look to get out on the ice in the event that Edmonton goes Draisaitl and McDavid on one line. But this is where I think you need to utilize McDavid and Draisaitl on two different lines because it creates that sort of like, oh shoot, now we have to really balance out our defensive group here, and we can't have just our shutdown guys out against. We got to pick. Either we can have our shutdown guys out against McDavid, which in theory would make more sense, and then hope that we can deal with Draisaitl, which is not an easy thing to do either. So it'll be interesting to see. Um, Again, although I'm gonna obviously give Vegas the defensive edge in this series, it's still very beatable, and it'll be interesting to see how Edmonton goes about picking them apart. So before we really like give an offensive like before we break it down, we'll look at the forward lines, which again will be up on the sides of the screen so you guys can compare the forward groups head to head. I have one at a time up on my laptop here, so we'll go start with the Oilers. These were the lines that like are listed from the morning skate. Chris Knobloch loves to throw up smoke screens as a head coach and go to practice with lines that don't actually end up formulating in games. But as you guys can see on the screen, at this time of recording, we've got McDavid, Draisaitl, and Perry on the first line. So they are stacking up the McDavid Draisaitl pairing, which we could see. If you asked me, I would rather start the game off with Draisaitl on the second line center. See what happens. If it doesn't look good, you can switch them back. But I would at least start with some separation. The second line, though, was playing really well late in the series against LA, so maybe we'd be okay. Nugent Hopkins, Hyman, and Kane. Kane has looked absolutely revitalized in the last few games. His first game back, which was game 2 against LA, that was his first game back after being gone for like 11 months after getting surgery. And he looked terrible. And then after that, games 3 to 6, he looked fantastic. Nuge and Hyman, they looked a lot more like their normal selves to end off that series. And like I was just talking about with the matchups, in the event that McDavid and Draisaitl get the Braden McNabb, Shea Theodore lineup, that's going to be it's going to be crucial for that second line of Nuge, Hyman, and Kane to generate a lot of offense because they're going to be getting an easier defensive matchup, whether it's Pietrangelo and Hannafin or if it's White Cloud and I believe Haig would be the other defenseman on Vegas. Then moving into the third line, who was also detrimental to the series win against LA, Adam Henrique was really, really solid for Edmonton defensively. You'd obviously want him to contribute a little bit more offensively, but Connor Brown and Trent Frederick were playing great to end that series. Connor Brown had, I believe, 3 points in Game 6 to help Edmonton get to the win. And although the Oilers didn't have the best showing of forward depth throughout that whole series, um, McDavid and Draisaitl essentially helped Edmonton even it up, and then the depth was what got us over the finish line. So if the depth can roll into Vegas playing the same way, that's huge. And also, Vegas does not have really good forward depth at the moment. Everyone likes to think they do, and on paper they might. And it's very possible that they play up to expectation against Edmonton, but they didn't against Minnesota. Minnesota's bottom six was absolutely dominating Vegas's bottom six. The only guy in Vegas's bottom six who had a really, really solid showing was Brett Howden. Obviously, it's very possible for the rest of the forwards in the bottom six there to, play up to the hype, play up to the expectation. And if they do, that'll be a problem for Edmonton. But I'm going to look at I'm going to take the bottom six that proved that they're playing well in the playoffs, as opposed to banking on a bottom six playing well after I haven't seen it. The fourth line, Matthias Janmark had 2 goals through 6 games against LA. He had 2 goals in 80 games in the regular season. Talk about a guy that just rises to the occasion. And then you've got Arvidsson and Podkolzin, who for the majority of the regular season found themselves playing on the second line with Draisaitl. They actually kind of work better in this role. Podkolzin has turned into a physical monster defensively for the Edmonton Oilers. And Arvidsson is a guy who is obvious. I mean, I'm not overly happy with what we got from him this year, but he can still contribute. And this line was working really well together against LA. Now, one thing to note about the Oilers' depth playing as good as they did against the Kings is the Kings were one of the best defensive teams in the NHL this season. So for your depth to be showing up against them is huge. Now we'll pull up Vegas's forward group here so we can break it down. I'll talk about the things that kind of scare me most as an Oilers fan. So the first line at the moment, it might not be the first line when the game starts, Eichel, Stone, and Karlsson. We are looking at 3 of the best defensive forwards in the NHL at the moment. Jack Eichel is genuinely a top 10 two-way centerman in hockey. Karlsson's not far behind. And McDavid is going to have a very, very difficult time dealing with those 3 guys on the ice at once. I can see Vegas switching the lines and putting Karlsson off the first line in replacement for maybe Hertl. Have Karlsson play second line center, Hertl go up to the first line in the event that Edmonton isn't going Draisaitl and McDavid. But if Edmonton does double up with McDavid and Draisaitl, I'm sure Vegas will respond with their fully stacked first line here. Hertl, Saad, and Kolesar. I don't love that second line personally. I mean, we're talking about a Brandon Saad who's way, way past his prime. Kolesar is usually a fourth liner. Hertl is still a dangerous player though for sure. Honestly, I kind of feel like this is a good line matchup for the Nugent Hopkins line when I look at it on paper. Who knows how it'll translate in the actual game? And then the third line is what kind of scares me. I feel like Edmonton would like to get the Nugent Hopkins line out against this third line of Nicholas Waugh, Riley Smith, and Barbashev, mainly because of Barbashev. Barbashev is a very, very dangerous player. He's typically a top 6 forward, but he's getting third line minutes according to this Daily Faceoff here. He could be dangerous against that Brown, Frederick, Henrique line if they're not playing up to standard. And then the fourth line of Tanner Pearson, Olofsson, and Howden. Olofsson has not been very good with Vegas. Tanner Pearson is not good straight up. And then, like I mentioned earlier, Brett Howden played really well in the first round. Now, there's one very noticeable name missing from the list here, and that is Pavel Dorofeev. Dorofeev, I believe, had 35 goals this season and was a threat for every single team. So hopefully, he isn't a factor in this series. I wish him all the best. Obviously, you don't want a guy to be hurt. But, I'm sure if McDavid was injured going into this series, Knights fans would be praying he didn't end up playing. I don't wish any ill will on Dorofeev. It is better for Edmonton the longer he's out. Not the graphic, the article that I had from The Athletic, they are predicting a game 4 return for Dorofeev. It is confirmed that Dorofeev will miss the first game. He is a great player. He is definitely a guy who can make a big difference. So it would be huge for Vegas if he can come back really at any point in this series. This series, unless Edmonton, I don't really see a world where by game 4 we're having that conversation of like, oh, this series is over. It's possible. I would say it's more so possible in Vegas's favor. I think like it might be game 4 and we're looking at like, oh guys, look, we're going into game 4 tonight. Edmonton's down 3-0 in the series, or if Vegas wins tonight, they could go up 3-1 in the series, and that'll kill Edmonton. So I could see that. I couldn't really see it in Edmonton's favor as much. Like I don't really see the Oilers ever having a 3-1 or 3-0 series lead. Picking Edmonton in 6, I'm looking more at a 2-2 series tie, and then Edmonton manages to steal 2 games. They win game 5 in Vegas, like in a steal, like steal that game. Kind of similar to the way it went with LA, although I don't want or think Edmonton is going to be down 2-0 in this series. So after all of this, I'm going to go with offensively. I'm giving Edmonton the edge personally. Let's get into defense. We'll start with Vegas since I already have them pulled up. So according to this daily faceoff, you guys can see that Haig and Pietrangelo are listed together. I'm not exactly sure how like recent this was put together. I'm not sure if this was like from practice today or yesterday or something. Pietrangelo has been really, really bad in the playoffs, so I'm hoping Edmonton can exploit that. I don't mind Haig. Theodore and McNabb is the pairing that's the most frightening. McNabb is the best pure defensive guy in Vegas. Theodore is best all around and one of the best defensemen in the NHL, period. Very dangerous player. And then Whitecloud and Hanifin, you can't complain about that being your third pairing. Although I will say Noah Hanifin is a victim of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and the rest of Edmonton as it is. He was on that 2022 Calgary Flames team and got absolutely exploited by McDavid and friends. So I could see that happening again for sure. It'll be more interesting to see that type of storyline when Edmonton's the home ice team and they get to have the last change for line matchups. But the thing that scares me about Vegas's defense, especially after playing LA, is although both decors between LA and Vegas are good defensively, Vegas's decor is much more equipped to join the play offensively and make an impact offensively. LA's not so much. So that's kind of the thing that scares me a lot. Vegas is a really good rush team, and Edmonton is going to have to do their best to deal with that. Now we got to go back to Edmonton, although I do know the pairings off the top of my head, but we'll pull it up. I mean, you guys already have it on the screen. I just got to look at it so I don't forget anything. Nurse and Bouchard is absolutely terrifying as an Oilers fan. I don't have the numbers on hand. I probably should have tried pulling them up before starting this recording. I wish that I remembered. It was really brutal. The expected goals for when Bouchard is on the ice without Darnell Nurse versus when he's on with Nurse is nightmare levels of bad. Like Bouchard is so much better without Darnell Nurse on the ice, defensively and offensively. Bouchard has a very positive goals for with Nurse off the ice and a very negative goals against when he is on the ice. So I really, really, really don't think that continuing to put these two guys on the ice together, especially against Vegas, who are much more dangerous offensively over LA, there's just no world in which that continues to work. However, the second pairing of Jake Wallman and John Klingberg was absolutely phenomenal against the LA Kings. We saw a revival of John Klingberg in that series. I still don't understand how that's possible, but it is, and that's like, hey, I'm not going to complain. So hopefully they can both maintain the level of play we saw from them in the last 3 games of that series. Fun fact, Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid, of course, had the highest game score every game. And what that means is they take advanced stats into consideration and throw together a number to kind of showcase how well you played. And John Klingberg had the third highest game score after McDavid and Draisaitl of anyone on Edmonton, which is absurd to think about. And then Brett Kulak, he's played fantastic in every single playoff run that he's been a part of for the Oilers. I would expect him to continue it. And then you've got Ty Emberson, who kind of gets sheltered minutes. I would like to see more from him. I do think he has the potential to be really good for us. He usually sees more time on the penalty kill. So we'll see how that develops. And then we'll get into the power play numbers and special teams. So Edmonton's power play in the playoffs is shooting at a 38.5%, which is pretty damn good. Their PK, on the other hand, is 60%. Now, these numbers are somewhat skewed because their penalty kill at the start of this series against LA was absolutely god-awful. It got a lot better to close out the series and is part of the reason why they ended up winning the series against LA and managing to turn it around. So I'm going to bet on Edmonton's PK being a lot better than 60% in the second round. We'll see how that develops. Vegas is shooting with a 27.8% power play, so over a 10% difference between them and Edmonton, but their penalty kill is almost 17% better than ours with a 76.9. I am going to give the special teams a draw here. I can't make a decision. I think the upside of Edmonton's power play is equal to the upside of Vegas's PK. But I think if you really made me pick, I think I'd actually give the special teams edge to Vegas because they had a really good power play in the regular season, and I could see it kind of developing into something similar to that. The number one storyline, though, to look at when it comes to special teams is Vegas is somehow every year the least penalized team in the NHL. It will be interesting to see how they do as far as staying out of the box against the Oilers. But the Oilers are a much different team than they were in 2023 in the sense that they can really compete with any team 5-on-5. Edmonton had the highest expected goals for per 60 of any team in the first round of the playoffs with almost 4 goals expected. So they can compete 5-on-5 now. It's not like it used to be where, people would say all you got to do to beat Edmonton is stay out of the box. They can't score at 5-on-5. Edmonton can score at 5-on-5 now. So it won't be as big of a narrative as it usually would have been, but still something to keep an eye out for. But I'm going to give the special teams a draw. And then we'll move into goaltending, which I actually need to pull up the goaltending stats. I'm going to be putting Calvin Pickard up on the screen, as you guys can already tell. I will talk about both his and Stuart Skinner's numbers because we could definitely see Skinner in this series. And talking about the goaltending is still Edmonton's biggest weakness coming into this series. The only thing that makes me feel a little bit more confident is Edmonton went up against Darcy Kemper last series, who is a top 3 Vezina candidate this year, and we made him look quite bad. Adin Hill, on the other hand, was, I believe, rocking an 880 in the first round, so not good at all, and very, very much so exploitable by Edmonton. But looking at Calvin Pickard has played, I don't know why it says he's played 5 games in the 2024-25 playoffs. He's played, maybe because Skinner might have gotten pulled, actually, in game 2. I can't remember. But he has 4 wins, 0 losses, for a 2.93 goals against average and an 8.93 save percentage. So not an amazing save percentage by any means, but still better than Adin Hill's. And then you can see his career playoffs there as well. We don't need to focus in on that too much. If we go to Stuart Skinner now, I'll pull him up really quickly. I apologize for not having this up already. Stuart Skinner, I'm a little bit worried to see what the numbers are for him. I'm not going to put them up on the screen. I'm just going to read them out. I mean, we all know they're going to be really, really bad, right? I don't think this is a mystery to anybody. Stuart Skinner with a 6.11 goals against average in 2 games and an 8.10 save percentage. Absolutely terrible. So not good whatsoever. There's also one other chart that I'm going to pull up on screen after I talk about Adin Hill. It comes from moneypuck.com. It is a advanced stats goaltending chart that looked at the goaltending from best to worst in the first round. So I'll pull that up on the screen later on when we'll talk about it. But just to talk about Adin Hill really quickly, get into his playoff numbers. Adin Hill in the first round against Minnesota was 4-2, and he had a 2.83 goals against average and an 880 save percentage. So very, very beatable. Very, like, that is something Edmonton can work with. If you want his regular season numbers, he played 50 games. He had a 906 save percentage and a 247 goals against average. So pretty good. But he wasn't playing up to his regular season self in the first round, and Edmonton is going to need to hope that that continues. As for that money puck chart that I was talking about pulling up, you could see it here now on your screen. As you guys can look at from this, the worst goalie in the first round with talking about expected goals saved and all of that, all those fun numbers, Connor Hellebuyck was the worst goalie in the first round, mainly because he has a ridiculously high goals saved above expected. And then the actual amount of goals he saves above his expected is not good. So it really makes him look terrible. But you can see there, Adin Hill is actually the fourth worst goalie in the first round when looking at his expected goals against and the goals he's saving above expected. Calvin Pickard is at 13th, which is the bottom 7. So Calvin Pickard was better than Adin Hill in the first round, a slightly smaller sample size considering Pickard only played 4 games, Hill played all 6. If I were to expect one guy to play better than the other, I would obviously go with Adin Hill. Don't get it twisted. I am still giving the goaltending edge to the Vegas Golden Knights. And you're probably wondering why I'm giving this series to Edmonton in 6 if I've given, the defense and the goaltending and potentially even the special teams to Vegas. And the reason for that is because I think Edmonton's defense is better, plays better than it is on paper. And I do think that Edmonton can really exploit Adin Hill, despite him being the better goalie of the best of the 3 goalies we could potentially see in this series. So yeah, I'm going to go with Oilers in 6. Now, I am not closing out the video here. I am going to talk about some storylines, some things that are really important, mainly to Edmonton's success, because I know more about the Oilers. Obviously, the forward depth is a huge part of it. Mainly Evander Kane. I feel like Evander Kane is a huge X factor. He's a guy that can make a big difference with his physicality and his scoring ability. Obviously, another storyline and X factor is how well are Eichel and Karlsson going to do against McDavid and Draisaitl. If they can stop them or at least severely hinder their production, then this is going to be an interesting series for sure. Not a good one for the Oilers, but I'm not going to bet against McDavid and Draisaitl. There's just no world where I do that. And then obviously that the decor is a massive, massive X factor for Edmonton. Can they play up to how they, up to the standard they played at in, the last 4 games of the series against LA? And can Calvin Pickard maintain his play? That's another huge thing. One thing to look out for on Vegas's side, other than the, not getting penalties thing, is Alex Pietrangelo. For those of you who remember from the 2023 series, Alex Pietrangelo with a nice 2-hand whack across Leon Draisaitl's wrists. Not a hockey play. He got suspended for 1 game. Should have been more. I will expect the Oilers to be hunting him, putting a lick on him whenever they can, finishing their checks against him. That's another thing where I think Evander Kane comes in huge for Edmonton. So that's something to keep an eye on for sure. And I think that'll do it. I can't say I'm overly confident in my Oilers in 6 pick, but I'm obviously gonna ride it out with the boys. I in my bracket did pick Vegas to beat Edmonton before the playoffs started. Switching my opinion is a little bit of a mix between how good Edmonton looked at the end of the series against LA and how not great Vegas looked throughout a lot of their series against Minnesota. I still can't believe they won that series. One other thing before I end it. Jack Eichel, Stone, Karlsson, the star players in Vegas, they were really bad to start the series against Minnesota from an offensive production standpoint. They did start to come around near the end of the series, so you'd figure that momentum will carry into this second round, but one can hope it doesn't. Anyways, that'll do it. Oilers in 6. I'll be doing post-game videos for every game that we play against Vegas, so you guys can see my thoughts as the series progresses, which means that the first video will either be out. It'll be out tomorrow, more than likely, regardless, but I don't know if I'm going to record it tonight or tomorrow. But yeah, we'll get into that. That's something for the future. If you guys have been enjoying the videos, I would appreciate a like or a subscription if you're really feeling generous. And yeah, leave your comments down below on who you think is going to win this series. I also have my TikTok linked in the description. Um, I've been posting content on there since the playoffs started. I've actually built a somewhat small community there so far, but I've been having a lot of fun with it. So if you like these longer videos and want something a bit shorter, my TikTok is there and it's linked in the description, along with the athletic article, which again I highly recommend you guys checking out. And with that said, I will catch you guys in the next one.